All right, basics. What is architecture and why do we use it? When we talked about the SDLC, using a model for the process is a lot easier than trying to reinvent the wheel. It gives us, the security architecture gives us a foundation to build upon. It gives us the errors that somebody else has already made and lets us avoid making them again. It gives us a way to approach security overall from a holistic standpoint in a way that is both procedure-based, understandable, documented, and intelligent. We are going to look at the whole triad when we talk about the architecture because we're looking at the whole thing overall. When we say it's identifying basic services, does that mean that we're not going to deal with anything complex within our environment, within the realm of IT? No, it just means that when we lay down the baseline for the architecture, we're going to see what's consistent across all of our security domains because of those are the ones that we're going to be able to govern from a central perspective. We want to look at both the technology and the behavior because having one without the other obviously doesn't accomplish security in the environment. These are my two favorite things. Documentation and strategic alignment right there together in one bullet point. This warms my heart. As a policy nerd, that's my favorite. All right. Usually we use standards. We like to use standards. They're the simplest way, again, of letting somebody else having made the mistakes before us and us just learning from their knowledge. Why do we do it? It's expensive. It's time intensive. It takes people away from their real jobs. So why do we do it? All these reasons. All these reasons right here. It allows us to make sure that after we've expended that initial amount, that our future investments are intelligent both from a security perspective and from a business perspective. It lets us look at it from long term, and we're going to talk about gap analysis later, but we get a long-term perspective of what we're going to want to spend, what's our desired end state. It offers interoperability. What does that mean? Andy, what's interoperability? It's a big word. It's got a lot of parts to it.
It's going to operate in different environments.
Outstanding. Yes. Yes. Very good. And what else? It allows systems and networks to talk to each other, applications to deal with each other. Why is that important? Because your domains might be using different tools from place to place, and you want to make sure that your organization as a whole can function. If you can, again, you want to standardize those. We talked about basic services. You want to make sure that your policies, that your standards are applied consistently across the environment and that you can enforce compliance in a consistent manner too. Just because the people in finance might have extra personnel checks before they're hired, you might do a credit check on them. You might require them to have financial disclosures. Does that mean that because now they're more trusted, they aren't held to the same standard of compliance with your regulations? No, absolutely not. They're still not allowed to go on eBay, right? Okay. And you want to make sure that your architecture allows some means to make sure that everything's doing what it should do. Best way for doing that? Best way to ensure your implementations are doing what they should?
Auditing.
Audit. Good. So how do we do it? There's lots of different models. You can pick and choose for your organization, and you should ensure strategic alignment. What does that mean again? What's that mean?
It aligns with business.
Security aligns with business. Neither one of them are operating in stasis, right? Good. No two environments will have the same security architecture because no two security architects can agree on what a security architecture is, what it looks like, or how it smells. Does this mean we're practicing voodoo? Is it just witchcraft for the 21st century, where we're selling the client a product that is arbitrary and ambiguous? Yes. No, that's not what it means. What does it mean? It means that everything has to be customized, that there's no off-the-shelf product, one size fits all. Everything has to be tailor-made for that environment. Here are some frameworks that can be customized or can be used that you can mold to your own enterprise. Zachman helped build the Federal Enterprise Architecture Framework. It's a way of looking at various project perspectives, build, plan, and design. Anyone played with Zachman before? Anyone work in the federal space and have to comply with the architecture requirements? It's pretty exhaustive. They are continually upgrading the federal architecture. Right now, I think they just released, what is it, the data perspective or something like that? Yeah. So they're continually updating it and evolving the Zachman. SABSA, basic outline of Zachman, but it's got a life cycle added to it. You're going to follow things from cradle to grave, as you should in the architecture. It's got 6 layers in its configuration. Open Group Architecture Framework comes out of DoD. It's got a common set of terms, a architecture development method, and an architecture content framework. Those are the components that that you use to customize your build for. And it comes with advice on how to implement it. That's pretty cool. Like that. The ITIL comes out of the UK. I think it was actually built by or documented by what they had called their stationary service. It doesn't mean their immobile service. It meant like their gift card service. But that was their name for I think it was signals and documents. I don't think that exists anymore. But they had best practices for governance, and it was focused on service. And we're not talking about services like applications or programs. We're talking about service delivery. What is it? What functionality do these things lend? And it gave a viewpoint of the architecture from that perspective. So what's the first step in building your architecture? Even before you pick which model you're going to use. The first thing you have to do is know what it is you're trying to design for. We have these 2 separate sets of principles. 2 separate sets of needs, so to speak. The principles and the guidelines. What do you need to have, and what would you like to have? Also, your requirements based on your functionality and non-functional requirements. Functional is a business need. It's something that's operational. How does your business do what your business does? And non-functional would be things like uptime, robustness, things that would be nice to have but aren't necessarily critical, unless, of course, your environment requires a certain level of uptime and robustness. Those things, of course, are dependent on the environment itself. How do you get those? How do you capture what those are? You're going to, we'll talk about capturing those in just a second. In the meantime, you're trying to build this thing around what the stakeholders want. Who are your stakeholders? Who's driving the requirements? What is a stakeholder?
Anyone who has a vested interest.
Good. Good. And what's an example of somebody who would have a vested interest in the organization?
Senior management.
Senior management does. Good. How about the business owners? If it's a publicly traded company, who are the business owners? Shareholders. Good. Good. Stockholders. Good. Customers. They also have a vested interest. Your vendors have a vested interest in your architecture.
The implementation team.
Most definitely, right? They're the ones that are going to be required to put the requirements, to put the systems that fulfill the requirements into operation. Can anyone think of an organization that requires its vendors to comply with its architecture all the way down to their productivity level?
PCI.
PCI is a great one. Absolutely. The credit cards force you to do that. You don't get to take credit cards unless you're going to adhere to what they say. Another one from a retail standpoint, Walmart does that. Walmart does that very well. Their distribution chain requires their vendors to produce at a certain level. Otherwise, they cut them off and say, we'll go with another provider, too. Does that factor into your world, too, in terms of generics, where you have to fulfill certain productivity levels to get it to your distributors?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure. Really.
That may be the case if you want that contract for that line of pharmacies. Mm-hmm. An architect going at these things are probably going to use all sorts of different stakeholder inputs, including regulations. Are regulators stakeholders? If you ask them, they are. But yes, they are to some extent. They have a vested interest in how you do your job. They're the ones going to be holding you to it. You can also use what somebody else has already built if you can tailor it to your environment as well.